Well, with me right now is a returning guest from the Emeritus Institute, and that is Eva Marie Rodriguez Morris.
Yes.
Long name.
Yes, unfortunately.
But it's great to have you back again.
Thank you so
and
much.
And you specialize in art history,
yes.
right?
Yes, I do.
So art history can, well, anything that was made yesterday is history.
Yes.
So you really can look at all different eras, but do you specialize in certain ones that you really like, the Renaissance period or certain times?
Well, my own specialty is early medieval English architecture.
Oh,
so I've done
okay.
extensive research on Westminster Abbey, for example.
Wow,
from,
okay.
From about the 11th century to about the 14th century. But in my classes, that we actually do a whole survey. And so we go from prehistoric
wow.
all the way up to contemporary art in the class. And so we try to cover the highlights as much as possible.
Okay. Now, you mentioned Westminster Abbey. Do you specialize in architecture as art? Or is it paintings of these buildings, or?
Actually, architecture as an art form.
Right.
Because it's very interesting when you look at art history, you're looking at history through the lens of art.
Right.
Whether it's architecture, sculpture, paintings, or even drawings.
Okay.
And see how history affected art and art affected history. You know, it's kind of this relationship back and forth.
Yeah.
Yes.
And of course, you know, looking at, especially back in Europe, and you can look at buildings that are 1,000 years
Yes.
old, where of course you can't here.
No, we're very
No.
young
Yeah.
still.
So you've brought along, now these are some paintings and drawings?
Yes, I brought along kind of what I like to do in my art history classes through the Emeritus Institute is two things: create a classroom experience outside of the classroom.
Okay.
So, for example, I like to go on field trips. I think everybody always likes to go on field trips. But when I take my students to the museums, I like to do it as a learning experience. So, for example, last Friday, we were able to go to the Special Collections Room in the Getty Research Institute.
Oh, okay.
And we were able to look at some of these drawings.
Okay, I'll hold these up because I'm going to hold
Great.
it up
Oh,
to this
thank you so
camera.
much.
It'll be a little bit easier. And what I'm going to do is just use this.
Certainly. So this is an example of a drawing by an individual named Laura Piranesi.
Okay.
Her father was actually Giovanni Piranesi, who was very famous at this time for doing drawings of monuments in Rome for grand tourists. So these tourists from England mainly, who would come all the way down and travel all through Europe, and they would order drawings such as this to take back with them as souvenirs.
Because there wasn't photography.
There was no photography,
Yes.
there was no selfies
Yes.
or anything of the like, or even postcards.
Yeah.
And so it was a wonderful experience for my students to be able to see these actual drawings, the real drawings there, books that a grand tourist might have looked at. We also were able to look at travel diaries from the 1600s.
Now this one's beautiful.
Yes, this is a picture of a painting by one of my favorite artists. His name is Canaletto, and he was alive in the first half about the 1700s. And another part of my class is to allow the students to develop an eye for looking at art, and so that they can go almost into any gallery museum and take a closer look at paintings and try to pull something out of it. So in a painting like that, for example, we look at the former elements of paintings, like the colors.
Yeah.
In this case, composition, which would be where the buildings are positioned. And here we have the Doge's Palace. Of course, that's the central seat of government for the Republic of Venice at that time. So it would be in the center as the most important element. Because a lot of times when we look at art and paintings, they have these messages.
Yeah.
And depending on how history was, the messages could be very political or not so much.
Well, that's true.
Yes.
Yeah, very. And now, when would the original been done of this?
I believe this one was actually done in around 1760s.
Okay.
Yes.
So.
And this is a painting that is at the Getty Center.
Okay, so this is something that, you know, the person that did this, or when they did this at the time, you know, I kind of think to myself, was this done in a day? Did they sketch first? And
yes. Yeah. Well, I tell my students.
Yeah, nowadays people will go out and might take a photograph and go back to their studio and start painting from there. But I wonder back then, because anything, the lighting alone is constantly changing even throughout the day.
Well, and I tell my students that time was a different kind of definition.
Yeah.
Way back then, they had time. They,
yes.
You know, on their sides, not like we don't, unfortunately. Yeah. But for Canaletto, what he had done is that he would go out and sketch, and then he said he's used this technique called camera obscura.
Right.
But recent research done in London by the Royal Galleries has kind of disproved that, because now we have technology on our side where they've x-rayed some of his paintings, and they found out that there was no sketches, you know, or use of camera obscura in the sketches beforehand. So now scholars are going to debate, did he use the camera obscura or did he not?
Now, camera obscura, which is a technique you're basically projecting, almost like a pinhole camera type thing.
Exactly.
And so therefore you can put it on a sheet of paper, whatever they used back then, a canvas, and use that and start sketching over that, and there's your layout.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And they, if you notice, there was such details with his paintings and his drawings, because we were able to see some of his drawings last Friday, that they believed that it would make sense that he would use camera obscura to get such intricate details, which makes his paintings almost like a postcard. You can really spot them when you go to a museum and a gallery immediately, because his is the one that's most photographic-like.
Yes. Okay.
Yes. Very much so.
This is all up at, you said, the Getty Research Center?
Yes.
So this would be up in LA?
Yes.
Right, the main
there's
center.
the museum, and then there's the research institute.
Okay.
So we were able to go into the research institute, into their special collections.
Okay.
Yes.
Is that at the same location?
Yes,
now?
at the same location.
Yeah.
So it was lots of
Is
fun.
anybody allowed to be in there? You have to be within a class or a
group?
The research part.
Right, the research part, you actually have to be part of a class. And then for myself, I had to, because I also do some other work there, so it was a little easier for me to go and make an appointment and pull all of these first, preview them all, which was such a wonderful experience. And it was hard to choose which ones that I could show, which ones I couldn't, because I would love to show my students everything.
Very nice. So moving forward, what are some of the subjects you're going to be talking about, or periods, I should
Yes,
be.
well, this summer I'm so excited because I'm able to teach 2 classes. One of my class will just be a continuation of a survey of art history. I'm hoping to talk about the Baroque period, and hopefully get up into post-impressionism, and early modern contemporary art during the summertime in one class. And then the other class that I'm teaching is also a continuation of the class I'm teaching now, and that is on modern art and architecture. And so it's been a wonderful experience to kind of look at the roots of modern architecture. And for example, we've been exploring how influential Frank Lloyd Wright really was to the Europeans.
Oh, I didn't know that, to the Europeans.
Yes, to the Europeans. Wow. So much so that when he published drawings, he self-published about a book of 100 drawings that some of the big architecture firms in Europe, when it was finally came out, they actually shut down for a day because they wanted to really look at his work, as the story goes. So he was very influential in Europe, in addition to what he was doing here. Unlike some of the other architects, for example, Green and Green, who, the arts and craft movement, very popular in the Pasadena area, they stayed regional. They didn't go out of the area. So although them and Frank Lloyd Wright were alive at the same time, they knew each other. I mean, not personally, but they knew of each other. That it was interesting to look at Green and Green's career, being regional architects and staying there, and then of course Frank Lloyd Wright and his influence. And what he did to self-promote.
I didn't realize that he was a self-promoter. Wow.
Yes, very much so.
And in a way, their styles were, I think Green and Green were a little bit more ornate in a sense, but the use of woods inside.
Right.
In the interiors of the homes, Frank Lloyd Wright, again, a little bit more streamlined, probably.
Well, in his early career, you can see how he was coming out of this arts and crafts movement.
Yeah.
But even to discover the arts and crafts movement came actually from Great Britain. In looking at Frank Lloyd Wright's earlier work, you can see the correlations between the two with Green and Green. And then he just is always, he's always drawing, he's always expanding, he's always looking for he was definitely a visionary.
Right.
Always drawing, looking for the next, I guess, I wouldn't say great architecture monument, but his mind was always working.
Yeah.
And such. Green and Green stayed in that arts and crafts movement, which is a focus on building, focus on materials.
Yeah.
And some say a reaction to the Industrial Revolution that had occurred over in Great Britain.
Yeah, well, very good. And if people are interested in joining one of these classes, you certainly can. You can go online to saddleback.edu/emeritus and look all those wonderful classes up. There's all kinds that you can take, but this one sounds really interesting.
Well, I hope so.
All right, good to see you again.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you very much. You take care, and we'll be back.